Let me guess, you've read the articles, you've run the numbers, maybe even plugged your information into one of those online Social Security calculators, and now you've got a plan to claim at 62 or 67 or 70 because the math told you it was the best move, right? Here's the problem. I meet people, smart people, who are claiming Social Security wrong, and it's not because they made some huge mistake. It's because they were following the wrong kind of advice to begin with. They were solving for a math equation when they should have been solving for a life equation. Social Security advice is everywhere, like all over the internet, but most of it has a fatal flaw. It assumes your only goal is to get the biggest number possible over your lifetime. So what do you get? You get break-even charts, you get calculators that tell you that you need to delay, you get generic rules that always say, always wait if you can afford to. But here's what the tools don't know. They don't know whether you're retiring early or whether you're going to phase out gradually or whether you're married and your spouse is going to depend on that benefit after you pass away. None of that stuff shows up in the calculators, which is why so many people who follow them realize too late that their strategy didn't actually support the life that they wanted. Let me put this very plainly. You're not claiming wrong because you made a bad choice. You're claiming wrong because the advice you were given wasn't real advice designed for actual real people. Now, the first big one is this. A lot of folks treat claiming Social Security like this is a one-person game. But if you're married, it is not. Social Security is a household decision because one spouse's timing directly affects the other one's lifetime income. And when one of you passes away, guess what? The smaller benefit goes away. I'm going to give you an example of what a mess this can make. Now, a couple I worked with, we're going to call them Mike and Janet. Their names were not Mike and Janet. I changed the information always when I talk about this stuff because I don't want to be telling people's business on the internet. They came to me. They both wanted to claim Social Security early. They didn't want to lose out if they died young. Understandable. A lot of people think that, but nobody had told them that if Mike claimed early, he was the higher wage earner, that it was going to reduce the survivor benefit for Janet someday in the future when Mike passed away. And so after we talked, we made an adjustment. Mike delayed his benefit to 67. Janet claimed hers early, just like she was planning to. And then we used a brokerage account to bridge the income gap that they have there. Now, that move did a couple of things. It protected their incomes. It gave Janet a higher, more stable income from Social Security if she outlived Mike. And we also didn't ring up a huge tax bill in doing it because we used brokerage money instead of just drawing from the retirement account. Think about it this way. If you're making a Social Security decision without thinking about your spouse, you might be getting it wrong, even if you've got good math. And so, how do you fix it? Start by asking two different questions. One, who has the higher benefit? And two, what happens to household income if one of us passes away? If you're the higher earner, delaying your benefit even up to just full retirement age, can protect your spouse with a larger survivor benefit. And in many cases, it makes sense for one spouse to claim early and the other one to wait. It's not about both doing the same thing. It's about optimizing as a team. Remember, a two-person game here. And so even just modeling a few different timelines side by side could be helpful. It could show you how dramatically the long-term income picture changes. This is the sort of thing that we do with our clients in the Clear Vision retirement plan to help them make their Social Security match the rest of the retirement picture. Let's talk about another one. Here's another one that I see all of the time. Somebody decides to delay Social Security until age 70 to maximize their benefit. But in the meantime, they're retiring. So they start pulling money out, tens of thousands of dollars from their 401k or their IRA to live on. It sounds fine until you realize a few things. One, potentially paying more taxes than necessary is not great. Two, you're potentially increasing the risk of running out of money later on. And three, and certainly, you're spending your own money to let the government keep their money in their pocket. That's not a great plan. Now, one of the other things that comes into play here is sequence of returns risk. If you're pulling income from your portfolio and the market happens to start dropping while you're waiting to get the bigger Social Security check, regardless of what the math calculator told you, you might be sabotaging your own retirement. It's not about the biggest check that you can get. It's about the right check at the right time as part of the right plan. And that's something most people never hear from mainstream Social Security advice. Here's the way to shift your thinking about it. Before you decide to delay Social Security, ask yourself, how will I pay for the gap between retirement and claiming Social Security? Does it involve spending my own assets? And what does that mean to a few things? One, my ability to sustain a retirement, And more importantly, what does it mean for my beneficiaries in the event that I pass away early? Let me ask you again, what if you spend your own money to delay and then you pass away just a few years into collecting? You've reduced the money that will go to your own family just to allow the money to stay in the Social Security system, never to be seen again. You also need to ask yourself whether you're going to need to take large withdrawals from your investments to do it. And if so, what does that mean for your tax bracket? And more importantly, for your lifetime tax liability. Now, if you're just adamant that you want to delay Social Security and that'll require distributions from your assets, that's okay as long as it's the right circumstance for you. But if you're going to do it, a smarter workaround is to use a bridge strategy to get you there, where you're pulling from conservative income sources, maybe even using some cash reserves to fund retirement for a few years, instead of just blindly pulling all of it from to-be taxed accounts like a 401k. That way you protect your portfolio in those growth assets and you can avoid overpaying in taxes. Sometimes the strategy isn't best to delay. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's balance, taking a benefit now, delaying another, like we talked about previously. Now, this next issue hits real close to home because I talk to a lot of folks who say, I'm taking Social Security as early as I can before it runs out. And I get it. The headlines are scary. Social Security is going to be insolvent by 2034. That's the last one that I saw. It's everywhere. But here's what the headlines don't explain. First off, insolvent doesn't mean bankrupt. Even if Social Security does nothing, about 70% of benefits are still going to be paid from ongoing payroll taxes. Almost nobody, more importantly, believes that Congress is going to let 70 million voters take a 23% pay cut. 70 million voters is enough to vote just about anybody out of office. This is not a political statement, but the fact is cutting Social Security is a one-way ticket to out of office. Now, the fear is real. I understand that. But the facts tell us a different story. So let me give you a little backstory on this. I've told this story here before, but Social Security was facing a similar crisis way back in the 1980s. As the old Mark Twain quote goes, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. This is one of those rhymes. So by the late 70s, the Social Security Trust was rapidly depleting and estimates were coming about when it was going to go broke. Sounds familiar, right? So a committee was formed that became known as the Greenspan Commission because a young, or at least young-ish, definitely younger than he is today, Alan Greenspan, who at the time was an economist, not yet at the Fed, he was in charge of the commission. They did a couple of things, but the big headline, the big change that they made was that they pushed full retirement age from 65 to 67. Guess what happened as a result of those reforms? They fixed Social Security for like 40 years. And here's the other thing. Guess who got that age 67 retirement age? People born in 1960 or later. Two things. One, those people still aren't even 67 years old. This change was made in 1983. That means that the oldest of the folks that were impacted were the ripe old age of 23 years old when they made the change. And we're just now getting to the point of worrying about running out of Social Security again. I tell clients this all the time. Social Security is going to change, but there's little chance that it's going to change before you get there. They don't make decisions that affect people close to retirement age. They make changes for people who are 40 plus years away from retirement. Now, as for taking it now because it's going to run out, that thing. Look, I'm not saying that you should always wait. I'm for taking it early if it fits the rest of the scenario. There are plenty of good reasons to claim early, but fear of missing it isn't one of the good reasons. Fear is a terrible financial advisor. Make your decision based on your retirement, your health, your income needs, your family, not on political headlines. Instead of reacting to fear, plan for some flexibility. And so here's the fix there. Build a strategy that gives you multiple income levers in retirement, a mix of things like Social Security, investment income, maybe annuity income, maybe it's part-time work or consulting work. That way, you're not overly dependent on any single source. You're in control, regardless of what Congress decides to do. Here's the other thing you can do. You can also stress test your plan. Run a version with a 23% pay cut to Social Security in 2034 and see what happens. Most people are surprised to find they can actually still retire, especially if they're proactive about things like tax planning in their portfolio structure. Now, I have no reason to believe that that will happen, and I don't think you should either. But if you're super worried about it, stress test the situation and see how it would go for you. If Social Security decisions were simple, let's be honest, I wouldn't need to make this video and you wouldn't be watching the video. But the reality is claiming Social Security is complex, and it should never happen in isolation, in a vacuum. It needs to be part of a bigger strategy, one where you don't just solve for the biggest check because a calculator told you so. You solve for the best retirement. That's why I created the Clear Vision Retirement Plan. It's to help people like you build an income strategy that actually works in real life, not just on a spreadsheet. We look at when to claim Social Security based on your total income picture, how to coordinate it with your spouse, your savings, your tax plan, and how to turn it into part of a predictable retirement paycheck instead of a guessing game in a spreadsheet. If that sounds like you, that sounds like the kind of plan that you want, there's a link down below for a no-cost consultation. When and how to claim Social Security is a topic that can cause a ton of heartburn, but the good news is it's not too late to fix it. If this video helped you rethink your strategy, if it brought a couple of things to light, hit the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. We got a ton of great retirement income here. And while you're looking for great retirement income, I reveal another great Social Security strategy right over here in this one.